From the creators who brought you RuPaul's Drag Race and $1 Million Listing, this is World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Abu.
Died like a dog.
God, we were just listening to Trump's mashed up speech with Obama's speech.
It never gets old.
It's really good. It's real comedy. It's real. Welcome, everyone. This week's Wow Report on Radio Andy. We count down the top 10 things this past week that made us go,
Wow.
You know, you might not have noticed, but it's 2019.
But it's almost 2020. It's almost over.
It's
2019
the
is
end
gone.
of a decade.
It is the end of a decade.
Can you believe it?
Snuck right up on us.
Wait, but the weird thing is, because your mind doesn't perceive it as a decade, because what you've done is you've thought of the decade as 1 through 12, and then the decade you think starts at 13. This decade has only been, because like age. We think of this as the teens, but it's not the teens. The teens started in 2013.
I'm
So
so
there's
glad
only been
you
7
said
years.
that, because
I'm sorry if that was confusing.
No, because I had to look up on the Google what you call this decade, and it's called the 2010s.
But we refer to them as the teens, but it isn't, because we had a problem, the aughts.
The 20-teens, the aughts, yes.
But we didn't really call them the aughts. That's what they were called in centuries previous, the zeros.
I call them the aughties.
The naughty oddies. Hey.
Yeah, but most people refer to them as the zeros of the first decade.
So what's this decade then?
This is the
2010s.
But it isn't. It's the teens. We refer to it as the teens.
Okay, well, we thought...
But we do.
Okay.
The teens, the tens, we thought what we'd do is a series of specials. This is the first of them, looking back on the top 10 things from the decade that made us go...
Wow.
Wow, yeah, tens across the board.
And we're doing movies this week. Movies of this decade.
Yeah,
the top 10 movies, according to us. Like anyone should listen to us about the top 10
either
movies.
Of you
the
have
year.
trouble trying to remember movies from this decade and find you were thinking of things from like 15 years ago, or it's very difficult to remember this past decade.
It does feel like decades blur, but
Yes.
but I was able to pull it together.
Well, I went to my best friend Wikipedia, and Arab Spring, same-sex marriage, the hard-on. Is it called the hard-on collider? No, that sounds wrong.
The Hadron Collider.
The hard-on collider sounds much more fun.
The CERN Collider.
Okay.
These are all things that happened this decade.
Yes, WhatsApp, Pinterest, Instagram, Snapchat, Tinder, Vine, and TikTok.
All this decade.
All this decade. Selfie sticks.
2010s.
Yeah, it's more interesting than you thought. And this I didn't know, but the kids, the youth, the best behaved generation ever since youth culture was invented. Yep. Teenage pregnancies, alcoholism, drugs, fights, unprotected sex.
That's all the stuff I was doing.
All down.
Yeah.
Way down.
It's what the Gen Xers were doing.
Yeah.
But the AARP generation, all those things are way up, thanks to James.
Exactly.
And the other thing that I hadn't, because I was really struggling, what is the character of this decade? It doesn't really have one, except beards. You two have beards.
It was a very
beards.
Well, remember, hipsterism was very hot in
Is
the
hipsterism bearded?
Yeah,
Is it
yeah.
beards?
It's kooky, weird glasses and kooky thrift store clothes and beards, and remember the hair was the fade that went up in the Aryan youth haircut and all that stuff that happened this last 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get on with the theme of counting down top 10 movies in the 2010s or the 20-teens that made us go.
Wow. 3 wows in one opening. I'm coming in at number 10
Number 10.
with a movie that it's hard to know where it goes in the top 10, but it's definitely top 10, which is Get Out.
Oh.
Which I thought was just such a fully enjoyable movie. It is, of course, Jordan Peele's directorial debut, which is kind of amazing.
And
It's
Jordan
like
Peele is famous from...
Key and Peele
Yeah,
and lots of things. But he is gone to do other things. But it sort of was like his Citizen Kane to me. It's like, who knew? And then he comes out.
He came out of the gate running. I mean, just galloping.
Yes. And it has social relevance about race.
Yeah.
It's hilarious, and I underline hilarious because I think so many movies that are funny are harder to do often than dramatic movies, and yet comedies seem to get short shrift when people make best lists.
And but it's terrifying. But because there's humor in it, that you're laughing, and then all of a sudden you realize you're screaming at the same time, and that makes the scary parts even scarier.
And it's terrifying.
Yes.
And you're on the edge of your seat the entire time. And it introduces us to Daniel Kaluuya, who went on to be in Black Panther as the lead. He was so good. Allison Williams has never been better used. To cast her as that sort of icy the sweet girlfriend who turns on you.
Yes.
Catherine Keener, everyone. Like when you lift off the cast,
Catherine Keener,
is the mother. Yes. Bradley Whitford is genius in this.
Yes.
And there is Lil Ray Howery, who played the DMV, his friend, who keeps calling him.
Yes.
Again, gut busting, and every twist to the very end. Of course, the ending was going to be an unhappy ending. They ended up making a happy ending, but every twist and turn had me gripped, and I want to watch it again. I want to live and get out. I think it's just so smart. It's everything you want it to be, right? Because it's just clever on a level that makes you feel smart watching it. You feel like you're in on this really brilliant man's mind.
And you know, there's a couple things that leap out at you and that stay with you forever and ever and ever. The scene where the tears coming down his face, it's so beautiful and harrowingly done. When the woman says no, like those things that like are some of the great moments in the last 10 years of cinema history, which you will never ever forget.
And it made so much money, and it, one of the things from this decade, I think, is more representation, more African American leads, more Asian leads that actually led to huge box office.
And they aren't necessarily telling black stories; they're just telling wonderful, great stories, and it's opened the door for these black filmmakers to do other things than just tell.
And across the board, because there's some of them have a big message, but it's that idea of like, we'd love to cast an African American lead, but it just doesn't make money.
Right. Yeah.
No longer true.
Yeah.
We'd love to cast Asians. They're just not big enough stars. No longer true. Jordan Peele also wrote this. We wrote and directed it. It's my Citizen Kane. Get out there.
Oh,
yeah.
I love that. Get Out is streaming on Amazon Prime. Which is another contribution of the 2010s.
See, we're finding
Love
it. We're finding
Amazon
it.
Prime. Yeah. Okay, James, number 9. What movie from this decade made you go, wow?
Number 9.
It's something that I go back to time and time again. It's an incredible movie, Room from 2015. With with Brie Larson.
And her Oscar-winning performance.
Absolutely fantastic. And Jacob Tremblay, who plays the young Jack, who is 7 years old. It's a story about a woman who is held captive in a 10 by 10 foot space by someone named Old Nick, who has captured her, and she gets pregnant while she's in the room, and she gives birth to a child, and the child grows up in the room, and all he knows is the room. They have a TV, a black and white TV that plays one channel, and it's bad, and so they get some news and game shows, but all he really knows of the world is what she tells him, and so she spins these stories, and she creates this whole universe in this one room. And it's not a spoiler to say that it halfway through the movie, he gets out.
Thank God.
And when she helps him escape, and she's trying to say to him that he's this is still spoiler, but not really because it's been 7 years.
Yeah.
He's in the back of a truck. He's on a flatbed truck, and there's a blanket over him. And when they tell him when the truck comes to a stop, take the blanket off and jump out of the truck. And he takes the blanket off, and he's staring up at the sky, and it's the first time he sees the sky. And he sees the sky and the clouds, and his mind just sort of breaks. And you see it in his eyes as he's trying to understand the world, which he's never seen before, and he's trying to understand the sky, and you see the enormity of it is overwhelming. He's like a deer in the headlights.
Amazing performance.
And he sits up, and all of a sudden he sees the grass, and he sees the skyline, and he sees trees, and he sees the house, and his mind, you just see it like opening up, and just the look on his face, the enormity of what the world is. And I have goosebumps because you see, and then he has no problem solving abilities, and he has to jump out of it, and he has to find someone, and everything starts to go wrong, but he has no problem solving skills.
Right.
And you're like, run, but he doesn't understand what it is to run, to escape, and he's like, do you see his mind breaking and being put back together again as he's figuring? It's just an unbelievable performance, and it's something that will stay with me for the rest of my life.
What happens? I've never seen The Room. What happens?
Well,
does he?
Eventually, eventually, it becomes a movie about how you adjust to the world afterwards. And he keeps referring to the room. He keeps saying, "I want to go back to room, mommy," because the room is a
It's
universe.
what you know.
It's what he knows. And, things were different in Room, Mommy. And there was somebody at World of Wonder who had led a very sheltered life. His name was Nigel, and I worked with him. And he didn't have a lot of context for things. He grew up very sheltered. He didn't see a lot of movies and a lot of TV shows, and he'd never been to the theater before or anything. And I would always say, did they not have that in Room, Nigel? To him,
I was going to say, as you say, it's an incredible premise. It's based on fact?
It's based on a number of different kidnappings.
But it really is an incredible premise and metaphor for what it's like in life when that blanket gets pulled off. Like the first time you go to a gay bar or something, you're like, whoa.
There's so many moments in your life where you're struggling to understand something. But just... And he's such an amazing little actor, as sometimes child actors can be, where they just, you give them a premise and they run with it.
Yeah.
And he just, when you see the eyes open as he sees clouds and you're experiencing it with him. And it's just one of the best performances I've ever seen on film.
Good one.
Oh, okay.
Room.
Yeah, Room, streaming somewhere. It's not on your list of what you were going to talk about.
People can find it. People can find
yes,
it. People have Google. They'll
just
figure
Google
it out.
Google it. Okay, number 8.
Number 8.
Her. Do you remember Her?
Her.
Came out in, oh shit.
Wait,
when
is
did it
this
come
the
out? I
Scarlett
think it was-
Johansson one?
Yes, 2013.
Yes.
And basically, in a nutshell, it's Spike Jonze. He wrote, produced, and directed this film. And the basic premise is this guy has a job writing letters for people. It's a little Cyrano de Bergerac. He writes letters for people who can't write letters themselves. So he writes letters for people, to express their emotions or feelings on their behalf. It's like a sort of an app sort of thing. Yep. Needless to say, his own marriage is falling apart. He's very unhappy. And long story short, he falls in love with his Alexa, his...
Siri.
The Siri, the personal guide on his phone, which has been through several upgrades, because this is, I think, 2077 when it takes place, and is fully capable. It's an AI device. It's fully capable of relating to you and engaging with you. And gradually he falls in love with his Siri, who is called Samantha. Interesting detail. It's called Samantha because he shot the film with the voice of Samantha Morton. She was the Siri. But then in the edit, he felt something was wrong. And thank God he did, because he chose instead. He went to Samantha and said, I'm sorry, it's just not working out.
Oh.
Yeah, she was fine with it, actually. And he replaced her with Scarlett Johansson. Definitely the woman of the hour. She is in Jojo Rabbit.
Yeah.
And she is so brilliant in everything she does. But this, I think, is her ultimate role because, she's got this beautiful sort of fwada. She's got this slightly cold thing, and it's perfect as the voice of an app. She's incredibly empathetic, but just slightly chill, just slightly distant in the way that if you're falling in love, it makes you want more. There's just something just slightly removed that you want, and so he becomes completely obsessed. His wife ridicules him for falling in love. And then, where it really gets me, I'm just going to read one piece of dialogue, because he's fallen in love with this app. It's just a voice. They've consummated their relationship by her brilliantly sourcing for him a sex surrogate who comes around so they can have sex. But it kind of doesn't work because, I know we're all supposed to be fucking robots by now, but the point is it doesn't quite work. It doesn't quite add up. Mm-hmm. That sort of uncanny valley feeling where it's like, so real, but it isn't quite the real thing. Anywho, she disappears. His app disappears for a while, and he says to her when she comes back, because he completely freaks out, did you talk to someone else? Yes. He says, are you talking with someone else right now? People, whatever. She says, yes. How many others? 8,316.
I dated that guy.
Are you in love?
I did.
Are you in love with anybody else? Why do you ask that? I don't know. Are you? Well, I've been thinking about how to talk to you about this. How many others? 641. And so Samantha, the app he's in love with, is in love with 641 other people, which I guess if you're gay is no big deal, right?
It's like dating a bartender. Joaquin Phoenix is the lead. We should mention that because his performance is quite remarkable.
And he's
Amy
right now
Adams is in it. Rooney Mara.
Yeah.
It's star-studded.
You know, he's the Joker now, and so we have Scarlett Johansson and Joaquin Phoenix in two of the best movies this year.
And where it's really interesting is, I mean, okay, so we haven't quite reached the point of her, but the interesting thing is we do a lot of our interactions are via Instagram and WhatsApp, and
or watching porn or
Yes.
FaceTiming, you know.
Exactly. So who's to say that those people aren't?
That's for the
virtual.
2020s. That's for the 2020s.
Well,
we're gonna have a. You know, virtual reality is gonna, which people are going. I haven't gone. There's a place down the street you can go and play games. People are like, it's so cool. It's like, aren't we all just gonna be home with like having sexual experiences in virtual reality?
Well, we have talked about how we fall in love with these Instagram people that we don't know anything about, we've never met,
Exactly.
and they're just sort of ideas in our head, and we don't really want to get to know them.
May I quote Woody Allen? Don't speak. I like it when people don't speak.
Yes.
You're hot. Don't speak.
Yeah, because they might as well be virtual.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great movie, and there's a little sort of life imitating art sort of thing because Sofia Coppola won Best Original Screenplay for Lost in Translation. And I didn't realize this. Lost in Translation is based on her relationship with her then husband, Spike Jonze.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
You forget that was one of the relationships from the aunt.
And then 10 years later, Jones won the same award. He won Best Original Screenplay Oscar for her. And both films have Scarlett Johansson in them. Isn't that like, woo! Oh, one more thing. Rooney Mara and Joaquin Phoenix, they're the married divorced couple in the movie.
Yes.
And they're currently engaged to be married.
Oh, best of luck. I agree. So we've done Get Out,
Yeah.
Room, and Her. I agree with everyone so far. I love those three movies.
And Her is streaming on Netflix. We've got to take a quick break. This is the point where I'd normally throw to Blake and say, Blake, do you have a question for us? But it's Edward, because
don't have
Blake's
one.
stuck in traffic.
It is. It's a
We-
terrible
we-
thing on the 101.
Yeah.
So let's go to commercial, but we are
Yep.
counting down the top
Yes.
10 movies of the 2010s.
Teens. This is Wow Report on Radio Andy.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
And welcome back to the Wow Report on Radio Andy. I was so excited about this show, counting down the top 10 movies of the 2010s, that I forgot to introduce ourselves.
Oh!
James St. James.
Hello!
Tom Campbell.
How do you do?
Myself, Fenton. And Edward standing in for Blake.
Hi.
Hi. What do we got? Number 7.
Number 7.
I'm going to nominate for Best Movie of the Decade, a movie that will not be, is Oscar worthy this year. We'll see in next year. Rocketman.
Oh, sure.
I
Bold choice.
found it. Yes, I'm ahead of my time. End of the decade. Remember 1939 when all the great movies were made? Gone with the Wind. I'm saying 2019, Rocketman. And not to diminish other movies, but I think it's amazing that the lead is about Elton John, who's a gay man.
Yeah.
I think that it's a love story between a gay man and his straight best friend collaborator, Bernie Taupin. I think that addiction and gay romance and gay sex, while very tumultuous, is represented in the purest, most natural way. And biopics can get a little sleepy. Biopics can get a little formulaic. Biopics can be a little, it's always like, what's that one thing as a kid that upset you your whole life? And there's a little of that in this movie. But they tell it fantastically.
They sort of reinvent the wheel with this.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's not just when you think you know where it's going from the very opening moment, which is sort of Elton John with wings and then one of his crazy outfits breaking into this thing and sitting down in rehab and telling his story to the group, the AA group. It didn't happen just that way, although Elton did come from the road to an AA group, and the spine of the movie is him kind of in an AA meeting in this fantastical outfit. But there's amazing moments if you haven't.
But as the movie goes on, he's
taking
taking
off
off
bits
different
and
things
pieces of the
as he
costume.
reveals more of himself
Yes.
and becomes more of a real person.
But there's one of the amazing moments is when he goes to the troubadour Elton John, which is where he was the moment that
Where
he was,
you just were last week.
Yes, I was, and to give you the feeling of how magical the troubadour is and how the moment transferred his life and his career and his
And
spirit.
changed everybody who watched it.
And changed everyone who watched it. He literally floats. He's playing the keyboard, and mid-song, gravity is defied, and he just floats.
And we've all had that feeling when we've been on stage, and all of a sudden everything is working right, and you just feel like you're being lifted up,
Yes.
and it's just one of those great moments in the metaphors. Yeah, it works.
I've never felt that.
You've never been on stage? Well, I thought when
Yes,
you were
I've been on
12th
stage.
When you were in 12th Night.
It just wasn't that good.
No, you were in Midsummer's Night Dream, or you were in
Yes.
12th Night. Which one?
Midsummer Night's Dream.
Right, and you played the woman, and it was
Titania, Queen of the Fairies.
Yes, and it was
Thank
one
you
of the
very
great
much.
moments of your life. Didn't you feel like you were being?
But I had
floated into
wings. I
heaven?
had wings anyway. But
And I also
back
love the
to
way,
Elton John.
in the terms of the reinvention, that they use the music not chronologically. They use the music to tell his story and put it in here and there. And I thought it was really effectively done. And a lot of, obviously, we'll see what happens Oscar time. I hope it's not forgotten. Taron Egerton does an amazing job
So
with Elton,
wonderful,
and they seem to
yeah.
have this incredible bond.
And he sings, really? He sings the songs,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And Bryce Dallas Howard gives a very stunning performance.
And who
as
plays
his
Bernie
mom.
Taupin, Jamie Bell, who from Go Billy.
Yes.
And he's so wonderful in it as Bernie.
They really are, and it's a warm. I guess it just touched me in so many ways. And the director's name is Dexter Fletcher. He did an amazing job.
What's he
actually
done?
came in. He came in to finish Bohemian Rhapsody when what's his face
That's so
kicked
weird
off.
because they are sort of, those movies are almost joined at the hip.
And they
I mean,
both sort of reinvented the biopic.
Yes. And that's a fine movie too, but I really, really, really enjoyed Rocketman. So that's
I love
one
it.
of my top
Okay.
10 for
Rocketman.
the 2010s.
streaming on Voodoo.
Do that voodoo that you do to me.
The number 666, James.
Number 6.
This is a movie that came out in the very beginning of the decade. It's hard to believe that it's been almost 10 years. 2010 is when Inception came out. And Inception stars Leonardo DiCaprio. It has an amazing cast. It's Leonardo DiCaprio, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Ellen Page, Tom Hardy, Cillian Murphy, Michael Caine, Lucas Haas. It really stars everybody,
Yeah.
everybody. Leonardo DiCaprio. It's directed by
Christopher Nolan,
Christopher
right?
Nolan, yes. Leonardo DiCaprio stars as a man with a unique ability to enter into people's dreams. And when he goes into those dreams, he's able to steal something. He's able to steal knowledge for them. And they use that. He uses that as a corporate thief, espionage.
Like
Okay.
sort of Google's data mining of our data scraping of our entire lives.
Yeah, well, it's still very relevant. Yes, still very, very relevant.
Now more than ever. Hashtag.
And I don't know if I can explain this properly, but when you go into the dream, you experience time differently in each dream. And so there's a mathematical formula that they say that 5 minutes is equal to an hour, I think, in the dream, or something like that. So when you are in the dream for an hour, you're able to accomplish more, and when you come back, only 5 minutes has passed. And he goes into the dream, and then sometimes he goes into another dream, and a dream within a dream. And each dream, everything starts to fall apart at different times, and there's the worlds fold in on each other, and it's beautifully, beautifully done.
Is he in mortal danger when he's in these dreams?
Yes, because
Okay.
at a certain point, the dream will fall apart and you'll be stuck in the dream forever. But he goes into the dream within the dream within the dream within the dream. He does 7 different layers each time, and he keeps going in further and further. And so time keeps stretching out so that in the end, he spends like a lifetime in this one dream, and then when he comes out, 3 years has passed, and then when he goes into the next dream, 10 minutes, an hour has passed, and then 10 minutes has passed. And for each time that happens, there's a kick that they use to get you out of the dream, and that kick is an Edith Piaf song, Je ne regrette rien, okay? And so in the beginning, when he hears the Je ne regrette rien, that means it's time to leave the dream. Okay, so listen to the Je ne regrette rien. So then in the next dream level, what Hans Zimmer does is you start to hear this sound, this music, and it's this atonal, discordant dirge. And you realize that because time is stretched out, you are hearing Je ne regrette rien extremely slowed down so that it takes an hour to play what is 30 seconds in real life. So listen to what the soundtrack is in the next dream.
Play against him.
I'm sorry. But what he keeps saying until by the next Dream Down, all you hear is just one note stretched out over a year, and it's just.
I get it.
It's like it's like just a huge, and it's absolutely genius. And you were sort of falling asleep, but when you actually hear it in the movie and you're experiencing, it's terrifying.
Was this your research that discovered this, or did you
No,
recognize that in the film?
No, you keep listening that in each dream the sound is more terrifying, more scary.
Very cool.
And he wasn't able to be nominated for an Oscar for it because he was using existing music.
I have never understood a Christopher Nolan film. Even that first one he did where the story was told backwards.
Memento.
Thank you. I like, what the fuck is going on? And in this one, I couldn't understand it. And then I suppose what was the astral science one where we're in the sort of time-space continuum? Yeah. Interstellar.
Oh, right, yeah.
I just about could follow some of that.
Interstellar. Oh, that's the wrong movie.
But they are about perception, our
Yes.
perception in a post-technological world.
Yes.
Or something.
Well, yeah, and Memento is like all backwards. That is kind of like
It is. It's
a-
true.
an
Everything he
obsession
does,
with
they're all
time.
thinkers.
Okay, so you want to watch Memento? Yes, they are, exactly. Want to watch Memento, just go Google it.
No, not Memento. Inception.
Inception. Memento.
Have you been paying attention to me?
Inception.
Yeah. I'm
James-
in a dream within a dream within a
Yes,
dream.
Excellent reporting this week. Thank you very much.
I hope I
That was cool. I
explained
totally
that.
get it. I
Okay.
totally get it.
Number 5,
Number 5.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, yes.
Well done.
You know what? Star Wars, love it. This is before came out in 2000.
It came out before Star Wars?
12, I think. Came out before Star Wars returned. Before the return, the rebooting of the franchise.
The worst reboot
And
ever.
here's the thing about Star Wars. I love Star Wars. It changed the world, etc., etc.
Wait a minute.
But
Wait a minute. Are you saying Guardians of the Galaxy came out when?
2012,
Really, that long ago?
something like that. Yeah.
That's weird.
Um,
It
Look
seems like
up.
yesterday to me.
Yeah, it's
But listen. Star Wars.
2014.
Okay. Guardians of the Galaxy came out in 2014 before the Star Wars reboot. And they said, let's get this done before Star Wars comes out. And, because Star Wars is great, changed the world, but Star Wars is kind of humorless. I mean, I know
Oh my God, it's humorless.
C-3PO and R2-D2.
It's so dirty and drab.
What? You guys are
I
watching the same
hate
movies?
Star Wars.
Okay, but we're not talking about Star Wars. I'm talking about Guardians of the Galaxy. And I think it's a real seismic shift in the Marvel Cinematic Universe,
Yeah.
which I see actually as the defining cultural event of our decade.
Now I don't
Absolutely.
know.
Now here's the thing.
Fenton has a way.
Technically, Iron Man and the Hulk came out in 2008. But then it was 2 more years. It wasn't until 2010 that the remaining 23 films in the Marvel comic cinematic universe
It's
were
been
launched on
a
us.
Marvel decade.
It really has. I mean, James, 23 films in 10 years.
You know how I feel about Marvel. I don't like
Okay,
Marvel.
but here's the thing, and it's my pitch about Guardians of the Galaxy, is it was the first really funny sci-fi movie.
Yes.
Now, I guess actually...
Except for Spaceballs.
yes, and Dark Star, John Carpenter's Dark Star. You're right, but clever, funny. Will you?
Keep going.
Really clever, and a sort of. I mean, on the one hand, I love the fact that it just celebrates diversity in a very unexpected way, because I suppose actually Star Wars is equally diverse, but it's one of my 2 favorite characters in Guardians of the Galaxy. I love Chris Pratt. You know, I have impure thoughts, but. What I really love is Vin Diesel as Groot.
so
The tree.
good. Yes.
I am Groot. I've never seen 3 words used such good and repetitive.
Every single line reading is you get a different meaning out of it.
Exactly. It's like the lyrics from a Black Eyed Peas song. They're so minimal, but so fabulous.
And Bradley Cooper is
Oh,
unbelievable.
My God, as Rocket the Raccoon.
Yes.
Love him. I just love him. And funnily enough, Kevin Feige, who's the genius behind the MCU, said that, for them it was all about the ridiculous pairing of a tree and a raccoon. and really, that is what the movie is all about.
And I got to say this because Chris Pratt in real life is not a very likable person, and
said
yet
so.
you can set that
Chris,
aside
Chris.
in this movie and still love him.
I
for who he is.
wouldn't kick him out of bed for
No,
eating
he's
crackers.
beautiful and he's stunning, and he did that transformation from sort of a
short.
schlub to being just sort of like.
Yeah, it's the first time we saw him ripped up.
Yeah.
And I also thought it began beautifully with the very moving thing of his mother dying, and she's made
Leaving
him a
the tape,
mixtape.
yeah.
I'm just going to start crying thinking about it.
I was gonna say
and then he gets beamed up by aliens. Don't we all wish that would happen?
The soundtrack
Spoiler
was
alert.
as camp as
sorry.
can be, which I loved. It was like every 45 I bought in the
Right.
70s.
Yeah,
you know?
and they all fit in beautifully.
did.
It really is a wonderful use of music.
Oh, well, I think that's the other thing, is rediscovering the naff classics and the joy of 70s music, which
Yeah.
was slagged off at the time for being awful and barren.
and they don't go
tasteless.
for the usual
No, but
70s
what
songs.
was the opening song? I couldn't remember which one it was. It's absolutely fantastic.
Oh, it's
But I can't-
wasn't it like a Sweet or Bay City Rollers or something. No.
something. I do know in one of the Guardians of the Galaxy 2, it's Mr. Blue Sky, ELO, and the most amazing.
Yeah, one of the
Was
best.
it Come and Get Your Love?
Come and get your love.
Yes, you're right.
Bum,
That's
bum,
right.
ba-dum,
I think
bum.
maybe it
Come
was.
and get your
Anywho,
love.
very, very good. So that's Guardians of the Galaxy
Yeah.
playing on. Oh, just.
In the universe.
Yes.
Find it. Jeez. Can't
By
find
the
a
way,
movie,
I
don't-
tell you one
shouldn't
place it
listen to
isn't
this.
is Wow Presents Plus. Guardians of the Galaxy is not on it, but that's no reason not to subscribe because it's only $3.99, less than the price of a latte.
So World of Wonder has its own streaming service
Thank you.
akin to like a Netflix
Yes,
or something.
yes,
It's
it
only
is.
$3.99.
Watch out, Netflix.
And you can watch things like RuPaul's Drag Race UK.
Party Monster.
You can watch Party Monster. You can watch documentaries. You can watch
RuPaul's Drag Race Thailand.
RuPaul's Drag
The
Race
finale
Thailand.
is coming up.
which is everyone's freaking out
And
about.
classics like 101 Run Boys.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Transformations.
There you go.
Yeah. Your own show.
Now we do have
Wow Presents Plus is very 2010s. It didn't exist until
you're
until this
right.
decade. Streaming.
Streaming,
Streaming,
darling.
darling.
In space, no one can hear you stream.
and now we have Blake back, our millennial
Yeah.
producer, back with us.
So have-
Blake- does
let's have a
Blake
question?
Yeah.
I do.
Oh,
Y'all know Easter eggs in terms of like media.
they're little surprises, right?
Do you know where that came from?
Ooh. Where does the term Easter egg come from?
Excellent question.
You're listening to our report, Radio Andy. We'll be right back with the answer.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
And welcome back. I'm Fenton here with Tom and James and Blake. You made it through the traffic.
I
Yay.
did. Ugh.
The question was?
It was. You've heard of Easter eggs in terms of media.
Yes.
Little hidden
Surprises
jewels,
in
yeah.
video games and movies, things of that nature.
Where did that term come from?
There was a horror movie about a killer Easter rabbit.
Okay. In Ms. Pac-Man, there was an Easter egg that gave you a lot of points if you ate it.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Well, some people say that it's because this guy on an Atari game like hid his name in it because they didn't know. But I read that it's because the cast of Rocky Horror Picture Show had an Easter egg hunt before they filmed. And they couldn't find all of the eggs, so sometimes you'll see an Easter egg.
On the screen of Rocky Horror Picture Show, the
Hidden.
original
That's
show.
so good.
Oh, be ding dong.
I don't care if
very
that's true.
satisfying.
I'm buying it.
Yeah.
I have a little Easter egg story for you. Alexander McQueen, the fashion designer, was commissioned to make a coat for Prince Charles.
Okay.
And Alexander McQueen hated the royal family, so he sewed "you stupid cunt" into the inside of the lining.
And that's a real life Easter egg.
There's a real life Easter egg.
I
Love
thought he
it.
sewed in an egg that went rotten.
That would have been
would've
good
done
too.
Okay, what are we doing? We're counting down the top 10 movies of the 2010s.
Because we're the decade's almost over,
Yeah.
believe it or not.
So we're having a little bit of a mini-series.
Yes.
This is the first in a mini-series. We've reached number 4. Oh,
Number 4.
Number 4 for you, number 1 for me, Bridesmaids.
Yes.
Bridesmaids
Yes.
is, well, from 2011, is
Wait, can you believe it's been that long?
it is the best movie ever made in my mind.
it's one
And
of the
I
greatest
say that with
comedies.
no irony.
Yeah.
It is, and I saw it in the theater and thrilled at it. And the reason I knew, maybe I said this before, but I was bumped up at some point, but I was sitting next to someone with a screen on a plane shortly after the movie had been on. And I didn't have headphones or anything, and she did, and she was watching. I just looked over and be, oh, that's a great scene. And then we'd fly a little longer, and I look to myself, oh, that's a great scene. Every scene is hilarious. Let me just remind you of the cast. It was directed by Paul Feig, written by Annie Mumolo and Kristen Wiig, a treasure, who Kristen Wiig, who's still around, but like she was perfect. Like it was her moment.
Yeah.
And it was produced by Judd Apatow, who we owe so much to. But remember, it was Kristen Wiig, it was Maya Rudolph. So immediately you go to like the wedding shop when they've had the spicy Brazilian food. And
I'm
they have
experiencing that right now.
Rose Byrne, how brilliantly. Rose Byrne was.
She is
mean.
such a good villain.
Yes.
And remember that,
Yes.
what they have to like they did give the speech, the rehearsal dinner speech, and they have to updo each other. It was so amazing. Melissa McCarthy.
Oh, so good.
Even though she had been in, Gilmore Girls and so many things, we as a nation opened our eyes and embraced
fell in
Melissa
love,
McCarthy.
yes.
And I just think of her leg going way up there on the plane. Ellie Kemper, who would be on The Office, who was the virgin. It was hilarious. Wendy McClendon Covey, who went on to be on The Goldbergs, and again had a huge career before that.
I forgot on that.
She
Yeah.
was the one who had the teenage boys, and she said that they masturbated so much, like when she folded their towels, they broke. I mean, it was every moment. Chris Dowd, who was the most charming.
I love him.
He was
And
the love
so
interest,
handsome.
and handsome, and the cop, and the driving by him at the end, and they're tucking in the thing. And then Rebel Wilson, who again, I think this was the movie. Everyone was like, boing, Rebel Wilson's hilarious. We love her. Michael Hitchcock, John Hamm, and the sex
Yes.
scenes with John Hamm, and what a pig he was. And
Yes.
how you could totally relate. And her trying to climb over his gate, and then the gate opens when Kristen Wiig tries to leave his place. And they open every scene. And Jill
The very end, when they sing, the girls come out and sing. Yeah.
And then Jill Clayburgh.
Oh, I
it
love
was
Jill
her,
Clayburgh.
It was her final performance.
Yes, an unmarried woman.
A comedic genius from the 70s. And then they brought back, again, without any... I guess there was a lot of irony, but I don't care. It's the same way that Guardians of the Galaxy brought back that 70s NAF music. You say they brought back Wilson Phillips.
Yes.
Right.
Just
and
sort of
I know this,
surprised.
and the audiences. I've always loved that song. I played it for my friend Leslie when it first came out, like because it had great meaning to me. And she's like, "You're an idiot. I hate you." And then everyone in the theater, it's like that's
the
a
whole
song
audience
that
gets
means
up and
everything
sings.
to
And
you.
Yes.
it's a marvelous moment of comic revenge because remember in the music video she was hidden out of sight. The
Yes,
larger one was
yes.
kind of like
Carney.
Carney.
just hide up behind
Our
a
friend
a
Carney.
dune and things of that nature. So it was a great
Yes, she was
virtual
front and
reckoning.
center.
Yes.
I know there's pain.
You've
know
even
there's
said that
pain.
you thought it should have won the Best Picture Oscar.
It should every year. It should every year. I've yet to see a movie better than Bridesmaids.
I
since
love
I've seen it.
the
Bridesmaids is available to stream on Vudu. James number 2. 3, 2, 3, 3.
Three.
Number 3.
I'm going to bring it down a little bit because this is one of my favorite movies of the decade. Was sort of a downbeat movie that was really sort of prescient and it's sort of just terrifying, absolutely terrifying. We need to talk about Kevin. 2011. Do you remember this movie?
I don't know that I ever saw it.
I remember
Tilda
the title.
Swinton, right?
It's Tilda Swinton. Yeah.
Never
Kind of
saw
when
it.
we were introduced to her.
Not really. Tilda had been actually around since the 90s when
okay.
she was in Orlando, and she's known
Right.
for playing quirky roles. Snowpiercer. She's able to sort of embody quirkiness and give it meaning and depth and everything. In this, she doesn't play quirky. She plays a mother who has a slow dawning realization that her son is evil, just evil, like in the way that the Bad Seed or Damien from The Omen or Mike Myers from Halloween is just born evil. She has a child who is played by 3 different actors who plays him at different ages. The first is he's a toddler played by Rocky Dwyer, I think, and the baby just cries and cries and cries, and she can't do anything to stop it from crying, and then he won't speak. It's like she keeps saying, "Shouldn't he be speaking by now? Shouldn't he be speaking now?" And he just refuses to speak. Then the next age he plays, age 6 to 8, he's played by Jasper Newell, and he's just an evil child, and he gives her these evil looks, and he says these weird, awful things to her, and she keeps trying to tell her husband there's something wrong with Kevin. We need to talk about Kevin. There's just something that's not right, and the father won't see it. He doesn't understand it. And at school, he hurts the kids, and he's killing animals, and he's being evil to the teacher. And then it's played by Ezra Miller as a teenager, and this is the first time we've ever really met Ezra Miller as an actor, and he just blows you away. It becomes Ezra's movie all the way, and we're building towards he does something, and it's it's been 2011, so I'm going to just say it. Spoiler alert: he becomes a mass shooter, a school shooter.
Oh, I thought he would become president of the United States.
No. He goes to school, and you realize as you see him practicing archery, you see him practicing all this stuff, and you realize we're building towards something. And the mother realizes something is happening, but she's still struggling to love her child, and that's the core of the movie: is that Tilda wants to be able to love her evil son, and even after this is happening, she struggles to find meaning in it. And was it her fault? Did she do it? And Ezra Miller, who is, he's so brilliant in it, and I don't think he's had a role since then where he's able to show this off. He now plays the Flash in the DC universe, but we haven't really seen it. And he's an LGBT icon. He's a fashion icon. He identifies as queer, and we don't know if he's gay, straight, bisexual, if he's pansexual. He's not famous enough yet for the paparazzi
scrutiny
to follow his dating life. But there's just something that's so watchable about
something
this
about
boy.
Ezra.
Yeah, there's something about Ezra. And as you blow his face up to 20 feet, it's like Marilyn Monroe or something, where every eyebrow, every twitch of his mouth, every shifting of his eyes, you are riveted. He's somebody who looks so much better like 20 feet tall. Ezra Miller. Unbelievable. It's a movie that you just have
And the movie
to
is
see.
called?
We need to talk
Did it
about
win
that.
any
We
awards?
need to talk about
It won a lot of things like at Cannes and Berlin and Toronto and things like that.
Mass shootings were before the 2010s, but that's another unfortunate thing.
Columbine.
That we can check.
It's sort of they've
But-
been slow bubble, yeah.
But this decade has been a proliferance, an acceleration.
And this gets inside the mind of a school shooter in a way that's unnerving and unsettling and fabulous and wonderful and
Cool. Fantastic.
Got to see it.
Number 2. I'm going to bring it down and up.
Number 2.
OJ Made in America, which won the Oscar. I forget which year, a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Won the Academy Award. 7.5 hours long. You think, perhaps, that you know everything there is to know about
Wait,
O.J.
this was
Simpson.
played in theaters?
Theatrically, but it debuted
Once.
at the Sundance Film Festival. They had a single intermission. Yes, I know it. In TV, it's been iterated out as a series of episodes, leading some people to think that it was deliberately intended always to be a series. But in fact, it debuted theatrically as one film.
It was meant to be a bladder-busting documentary.
And it sure was. Because
could
you
use
know,
The way
Run
that Greed
Pete.
was when I was a child.
so we had 1994, OJ's the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson, and then OJ's flight down the freeway, and
Ron Goldman.
and
Ron
Ron
Goldman.
absolutely yes. And you have this sort of. There was something going on in LA at this time as well. It wasn't just this single murder that was so fascinating to people of this former football star and beloved icon.
Well, we were at a weird point in pop culture.
Yes,
Yeah.
and LA was in a kind of apocalypse, news apocalypse, and you had the riots.
2 years prior.
Yep.
And this is the beginning of when the news actually pivoted towards being 24 hours.
The
And
whole
then-
reality, the emergence of reality.
News as reality
And
TV.
the history of racism in
Well,
Los Angeles and the history of racism in the LAPD.
Yes.
And, a lot of times I have to say, and I'm not looking at, but sometimes documentaries feel like someone has a point to make.
And they're
And
pounding
then they
it,
just
yes.
they've this felt contextualized in a way that helped me understand it.
Yes.
It didn't feel forced. It felt really illuminating.
I think you're right, and I think it's on the verge of the binging, streaming world that we're living in
Yes.
now, and it brilliantly knew that to tell this story, because Ezra Edelman, the director, at first turned it down. He said, "I don't want to do it. I think we know everything there is to know." But then he brilliantly got the fact that to actually tell the OJ story, it isn't about telling a 1-hour story in which you do indeed repeat the things we already know. It's about having that enormous expanse of time, 7.5 hours, to tell a really nuanced, layered story in which it isn't just OJ and this murder, but as you say, it's a history of racism, police bigotry,
The cult of
social
celebrity.
tensions, cult of celebrity, all these large themes that are sort of combining to create this perfect storm in this murder and subsequent trial. absolutely amazing.
And it's sort of
piece work.
everything about the 20th century as the 20th century is building to a close.
Right.
And it's pulling all those elements together into one big final epiphany that about the 20th century.
And you know what's interesting? I think there's been many documentaries since sort of multi-part series, but I don't think anyone has really quite pulled off that combination of an individual story, very, very focused, narrow lens, and then on the other hand, a huge society-wide, cinematic, wide lens look.
Going from micro to macro.
Thank you. And the ability to interweave those stories. I think it's a shame because I think too often the Netflixes are looking for these crime stories, but they're not. The series are great, but they're not telling this bigger story, which I think is aching to be told. Interestingly, it won the Academy Award, and leave it to the Academy, of which I'm a member, proud member, leave it to the Academy to fuck it up. Because they immediately then banned multi-part documentary series. In other words, limiting the genre in terms of awards back to being a 90-minute feature, which is so backwards looking. Only the Academy could do this. They always get it wrong in terms of handing out awards. And then when they finally give an award to something really good, they change the rules so it could never win again. It's like
they're always afraid
right.
that something's going to change. Things are going to change. People.
Yeah, exactly. So that's my rant. RuPaul's Drag Race 2020 is going to be huge for you. DragCon UK, January 18th and 19th. Come see us at Olympia in London. Tickets at RuPaul's dragcon.com.
Yep.
But then you can also go to Vegas.
Yes, we have RuPaul's Drag Race Live.
RuPaul, I've never heard of her.
RuPaul's Drag Race Live, the first drag residency at Flamingo Vegas, and it starts at the end of January. You'll be hearing a lot more about it as we get closer.
Get your tickets at RuPaul's Drag Race Live.com.
Or you can go to RuPaul'sDragRace.com.
RuPaul.
It's her sister.
My name's RuPaul. She's from the South. RuPaul, this is my sister, RuPaul.
Will you be RuPaul for Halloween?
Yes, ma'am. Your country breakfast is ready.
You're listening to the Wow Report on Radio Andy.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
And welcome back. We've been counting down the top 10 movies of the 2010s that made us go,
wow.
Decade-defining movies.
Yeah. And, you know, it's hard to pick a number one.
Well, we kind of realized during the break we hadn't picked a number one.
So we scrambled to think
but
very
we've
hard.
come up with the perfect one, just so you know that we spent a lot of time on this show for you. But the number one movie of the 2010s is...
Number one.
Tangerine.
God, it was so groundbreaking, wasn't it? Unbelievable.
Shot on iPhone.
Yes.
Shot entirely on an iPhone.
With the help of an anamorphic...
Lens.
yes.
Yes, because you got, when you say shot on the iPhone, you think you just took out your iPhone and filmed. But no, you have special lenses that you stick onto the end of the phone. So it's
An adapter.
Directed by Sean Baker.
Yes.
Who did Greg the Bunny?
Katana, Kiki Rodriguez, Maya Taylor, James Ransone. It was a blur. It was about transgender sex workers working in Hollywood in our neighborhood.
And it's basically shot. I mean, it's supposed to be one day where they're walking down the street. They're going to find a friend. Is it? What are they doing?
Boyfriend cheated on her, and they're going to go find him and teach him a lesson.
And it starts at the donut shop,
which is now Danny Trejo.
Yes.
Now, what was the donut shop called?
Donut. It said donut.
Yeah. And it was very famous. It'd been
What
there
is
for 40
donut?
years.
Corner of Highland and Santa Monica,
Yeah.
which is not too far from the LGBT center, and it was all about walking there, walking to the subway, coming back around, and what
It was a road movie on foot.
Yes. And what it uncovered to me, because we literally drive by there. We used to shoot Drag Race right across the street from there, and even though we know. You'd see presumably sex trans workers. You would just, I don't know, you just sort of absorb it in your daily life, and you think, well, I'm going to work or I'm going here. And this, step by step, it uncovered a culture, an economy, that was real, that they sort of captured. It was a blur between what was acting and what was what was real.
Used a couple girls that he knew, that the director knew, and he gave them these roles. They hadn't really acted before, and you really just got to know them in a way that felt real.
I mean, I think the film actually also owes a debt to John's, which was starred the
Bruce
young
LaBruce?
Wilson Cruz.
Yes,
Bruce LaBruce.
Was it?
It was.
Or was it Rick
Was
Castro?
I think it was Rick Castro and Bruce LaBruce.
Yeah,
I think
okay.
they did it together, as a matter of fact. And that was also set on the sex workers, rent boys of Santa Monica Boulevard. And if I can just add in 101 Rent Boys, which, because the first World of Wonder office in LA was on Highland and
Selma.
Fountain. Highland and
Selma.
Fountain. Highland and
Selma.
Fountain Selma.
Highland and Fountain. It was Fountain. It was Fountain. It was on the where ammo is.
No, it was Selma.
Where Salt's Cure was. James, it was before your time, darling.
No, because Fenton and I mean, Theron and I went to Spotlight every night to pick out the boys for
Yes,
you.
you did. But we started. We were on Highland, where Salt's Cure is now. We were on Highland and Lexington, and that's where we would come and go and always see the road. That's where the idea came from.
Lexington. We can settle at Lexington.
Can we?
But when you started doing the movie,
We were in Crossroads.
Yes.
Okay. We were. Okay. We were on Selma.
And that
Thank
is
you.
something you and Randy directed, and it's about gay sex workers.
Yes, and James and Theron would go out and pick
And
them up
find
and
the
bring them
sex
back to
workers.
a.
And is it available on Wow
It is
Presents
on Wow
Plus?
Presents Plus.
No, but it's worth seeing. It's really kind of a
And
time
it-
capsule and very respectful, as is Tangerine,
Yes.
where you get to see what their world is, and you don't leave with judgment. I didn't leave with judgment.
No.
You leave with a deeper understanding, and how again when there's an economy, there's a survival, and these are things that literally in my life I drive by my way to work, and you realize that it uncovered a world that lived right around me.
Right.
And that's what I found so amazing about it. And if you haven't seen it, and you have I don't think you'd even know it was shot on an iPhone if you didn't know that.
beautifully done.
Beautifully done.
It looks gorgeous.
Tangerine.
And the poster's beautiful too.
Yeah.
Was it the same year as Moonlight?
It was 2015. So
Huh.
And were there?
feel like it
Did
was
it win
before.
awards?
it did.
It did, but it didn't win Academy Awards
Right.
because it was
It was
I
more
think
of
it won
a.
some Independent Spirit Awards. I think it sort of swept the Spirit Awards.
right.
It was the first Academy Awards campaign for openly transgender actresses. So there you go.
But I might say that there was a campaign. Paul Newman tried to get a campaign for Hollywood Lawn back in the 1970s when she was in Trash.
Great.
And that she didn't get it, but it was one of the first times.
Right. Well, that was an individual. This was a studio. And thank you for fact checking me live.
No,
here on
I
the
wasn't.
air.
Cut it out. I wasn't meaning to do that.
I love it.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Wow Report on Radio Andy Sirius XM. You can listen to previous episodes on our YouTube channel, Wow Presents. Not to be confused with Wow Presents Plus. Wow Presents is on YouTube, totally free.
Free.
We'll see you same time, same place next week. Until then, thank you for listening. Go out and do something that makes the world go wow.